I think we started this morning talking about the advantages that India enjoys, and I talked about a bunch of Ds. We have to add the diaspora to the number of Ds that we have going for us as advantages, and clearly that's very visible here from what we are witnessing in Abu Dhabi today. Welcome to Indiaspora, Sunil, Munjal, and Kris Gopalakrishnan. It's a pleasure to have you join us here. I'm just going to take off from where the conversations have left us. And I want to start by talking to you about the scale gauntlet that Gopal Srinivasan has thrown our way, especially since we're talking about the role of private capital. Before we talk about philanthropic capital, let me talk about private capital. Mr. Munjal, let me start by asking you, the scale problem that we seem to have, what can be done to fix it? Are we any closer to being able to find a fix for it? Do you feel confident, optimistic? What's the prognosis at this point in time?
So as you're probably aware, Shereen, and maybe some people in the room, in our organization, we built 7 globally leading companies. And we've actually gone on to support a number of others which actually have built scale. And in my measure, the scale must not be just the biggest and the best in the city, region you are. It has to be best in class in the world, and that is the only scale we should be comparing with. And Gopal is right, that this is one of the challenges that we face. We built multiple islands of excellence. We need to figure out a way to allow first the excellence to leak, and these islands to scale to sizes that actually make true impact. So both are linked, by the way, to impact as also the efficiency, because scale has a magical quality which allows you to do things you cannot otherwise do. The reach you can create, the connections you can make, the impact you can have, the benefit you can get, and all of that lies in scale. So even if you need to shrink your margin, the scale more than makes up to allow you to do, to build businesses which are able to fund themselves, support themselves, and many, many others around them. So what do we need to do? It's actually a mindset more than anything else. As I mentioned, we have done it multiple times. In fact, when we look at any new investment, one of our key criteria, we actually don't look at a balance sheet or a business plan till very, very late when we're looking at any investment. We actually look at people first. We look at their credibility, their governance system, their integrity, and whether they are lateral thinkers or not. We love lateral thinkers, by the way. We like those who are completely passionate about what they do, but have the ability to turn on a coin when the environment changes, because the environment will change.
Yeah.
That's a given always. And we also only invest in those which will have a massive positive social fallout, but we will never invest in a company that we cannot support. We never invest in a company that's not aiming to become the biggest and the best.
Aiming to become the biggest and the best. Is it hard to find companies that are aiming to become the biggest and the best, Kris Gopalakrishnan, as you look at where Axelar's money goes in at this point in time? Are you finding more candidates who will fit the bill of being the biggest and the best and world class?
I think what is required is the mindset that Sunil talked about. We have many examples of companies that have scaled up significantly, that have provided new models for the world, and that have gone from India to the world. So, I'm fortunate to be involved in a few of those. I'll just give you 2 examples. And I'm going to give you these examples not from the for-profit sector, from the not-for-profit sector deliberately. And the reason for doing that is, if it can be done from the not-for-profit sector, I'm quite sure that we can do it from the for-profit sector also. I'm not talking about the for-profit because IT industry itself is a great example of how we have gone from India to the world. So from the not-for-profit sector, the first thing is the modular open source identity program, which is an open source implementation of the UID. Everybody talks about UID, unique ID in India. But do you know that UID has now been exported to 29 countries in the world? 100 million Philippines are getting UID on this MOSIP platform. The MOSIP platform is housed in IIIT Bangalore, which is a educational institution supported primarily by philanthropy. And the model is very unique. It's completely open source. So any country is free to download it and implement it. We train the implementation agency or the system integrator. And you can use any system integrator. And multiple countries are using it. On top of that, many of the startups are now going to these countries to provide services. Indian startups. And this is a unique model India has provided to the world, which is public infrastructure, private innovation. DPI, digital public infrastructure, on top of which we build applications and we build companies, etc. The term new models for the world, right? Instead of being dependent on few companies for all your technology needs, you create a public infrastructure. On top of that, private innovation goes. And it's now being exported to the entire world. Okay? More and more countries are looking at it. The World Bank is supporting it and doing this. The second example I want to give, again, it's to also say, we must have the confidence to do it. And I'm going to actually take your permission to read something now.
Please do.
Well, I'm proud of this also. In this special issue, the Journal of Comparative Neurology is proud to bring to the scientific community a monumental contribution that comes not from the usual Western powers in business of generating knowledge about the brain, but from an unexpected newcomer. The contribution is Dharani, a freely accessible digital micrometric resolution 3-dimensional atlas of the developmental fetal human brain, currently available for 5 gestational ages during the 2nd trimester, and so on. The Indian equivalent of the Allen Institute of Brain Science in the US. This is the Sudha Gopalakrishnan Brain Center at the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. It is no wonder then that the Dharani, the 2nd human brain atlas that the Journal of Comparative Neurology presents to the scientific community, was delivered by a brain research center created with a single specific purpose of mapping the human brain on a cellular level. This is launched as a joint initiative of the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor of Government of India, private philanthropy. Dharani is the largest publicly accessible digital data set of the human fetal brain, created less than 1/10 of the initial funds that powered the Allen Brain Atlas, and with a technology platform that was entirely custom-made in India between 2020 and 22 during COVID pandemic, featuring 5,132 plates of developing human brain. And it's a freely available resource. So Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, that joins the Allen Brain Institute, and India joins the US at the table of human brain cartography, where large sums are invested in the name of providing humankind with freely accessible atlases of available knowledge about the structures that compose the human brain. This is a example of DNA sequence. The first time the genes, DNA was sequenced, right? Getting human brain data at the cellular level. So I'm just giving you these 2 examples to say that from India to the world at scale, at world-class nature, is possible. We need to have the confidence and we need to invest. And our startups, more than 100 unicorns, many of them are becoming global. I have absolutely no doubt about this.
No doubt about the fact that India is going to march into the world across different categories. And thank you very much for highlighting that breakthrough that has just come in from the IIT lab in Chennai. And of course, for those of you who don't know, but IIT Madras has in fact created a significant incubator, which has been an incubator for many of India's leading startups, especially on the space side as well. So it's good to see that there's a breakthrough there on what's happening in medical R&D. But Mr. Srinivas, Kris, let me take that point forward with you. When we talk about these examples that you gave us of, a company sitting out of an academic institution in Bangalore being able to do digital public infrastructure, or this recent example that you spoke of, how do we ensure that these don't become exceptions, that these are in fact the norm? What needs to change in the ecosystem, in the environment, to ensure that we see many more of these examples proliferate?
So over the last 10 years, I have seen the Prime Minister leading from the front on the startup ecosystem. He announced the Startup India initiative in 2015. From then to now, India has become the third best destination for startups. We have more than 120, 150 unicorns today, and this will scale up. Many of them will stay around to become multinationals. I know at least 20 companies which are startup companies which are going to do IPO in the next 2 years. Right? At least 20.
20 going to IPO in the next 2 years.
Next 2 years, right? So, in the startup ecosystem, I see the confidence and the money coming to build these large companies. We need to. So, where the gap is, we need to invest in research and R&D. If India needs to become a developed nation, it will have to be built on IP that we create in the country that we own. The IP has to be owned by Indian entities. And for that, we need to invest in, R&D, and we have to increase the spending on R&D. Government is stepping up by announcing the national missions on AI, on cyber-physical systems, on quantum computing, etc. Government is stepping up the money. The challenge is that money is not being absorbed because there's no place to put that money. The capacity to create large mission mode programs doesn't exist. And industry is missing.
Why is industry missing, Sunil, Munjal? Year after year, at the time of the budget, industry talks about the fact that we'll do more R&D if the government gives us more tax breaks. Why does Indian industry need tax breaks to incentivize research and development? Why is industry missing, to Kris's point?
So there are two parts, I think. One, which was mentioned in the earlier session, what you need is a simple set of rules, laws, and regulations, and the government to step out of the way for business really to function, but to be available as a safety net. Those are the two requirements from it. In fact, some years ago, we had this interesting conversation. I think you were in the room that day when we asked government, we only need 3 things from you. He said, oh, that's great. What are these 3? I said, make it easy to set up a business, make it easy to run a business, and God forbid, if you need to, make it easy to shut down a business. So our rules, laws are actually based on mistrust. Please remember, they were designed in British time when a small minority was trying to run a country that was against them. So all the rules say, citizen, I presume you're going to do the wrong thing. Industry, I presume you are crooked. So if you turn this on its head, I think you will unleash a tremendous amount of energy which already lies in our system. Going back to your point on should tax breaks be there, tax breaks are there every country in the world for research, for innovation, for new ideation, for philanthropy. We don't have a tax break for philanthropy, by the way, in India. We are one of the few countries. So I think we need to be smart about this, because what you're doing is you're directing behavior towards good things. And creating new knowledge and innovation research, as we've heard innumerable number of times, is an absolute crying need today.
Yeah.
So company after company has said, we want to do it, but both the regulation and the ability. So please remember, in India, we have a very interesting system. We have frugal manufacturing, frugal design, frugal engineering, and also thinner margins in many other parts of the world. So it's important that we create this virtuous cycle of growth with higher consumption, therefore higher demand, therefore higher production, therefore higher reinvestment into capacity. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's exactly the conversation we've had every year. At this moment, if you ask me why are there are companies investing, why are more companies not investing? Because many of them are running at 60, 70% capacity utilization. And they're concerned that we've seen this demand go up and down, first in the rural areas, then in the urban markets. But I'm a great optimist on India. I think our direction is absolutely right. We need to accelerate some of these initiatives. And again, right from the Prime Minister down, they have spoken of deregulation now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it is necessary. So it's not R&D in isolation that will make a difference.
Sure.
It's our availability to absorb it, create the capacity, utilize it, and then recycle it back. So if you look at some institutions, I can give you the example of Mayo Clinic, for example. Okay? They are considered the #1 healthcare institution in the world year after year after year for 2 reasons alone. One, they have the best record keeping in the world. Second, they have a unique ability to turn research into actual care and protocols for care.
Yeah. No, you're right in pointing that out. But Kris, let me come back to you since we're talking about impact and we're also talking about doing things for good. In India, we have the corporate social responsibility, which is mandatory. Profitable companies need to park away 2% of their profits towards corporate social responsibility. And then you have philanthropic capital. So the available pool of capital has been going up year after year. The question now is, how do we mobilize this capital to really be able to unlock value at scale? What role and relevance do you see between CSR as well as philanthropic capital to address some of India's access deficits that we're talking about?
So I'm truly focused on research, solving problems for the medium to long term rather than addressing problems today. And I think there is a role for CSR and philanthropy to invest in research. Very few initiatives are there to invest in research in the country. So one, I have been saying that out of the CSR funds, it's estimated to be about 25,000 crores per year the industry is expected to spend. Allocate 20%, that's 5,000 crores per year, and directed towards investment in research. Because, you know, we want industry to invest, so...
How do we create this national compact, so to speak? Because what...
Privately managed. So
exactly. So because you get to spend what you want to using your CSR money or your philanthropic money. How do we create this national compact to address problems at scale?
So we need to understand the role IP and R&D are going to play in the development of the country and transition to a developed economy. We need to create that kind of narrative and storyline which says that we must invest in innovation. We need to invest in our own IP and things like that. I think if we are able to do that, in two-wheeler, for example, we are the leaders in the world. There are many examples where we are leaders in the world. So we need to create those categories in everything that we do. And we need to think about from India to the world, which two-wheeler we are doing that, right? So we have to think about this and have the, I think we have the money. We have to just direct it towards the relevant areas. And one more thing,
Kris, I think the direction has begun already.
Yeah, one more thing I just want to point. India has a very unique opportunity because India is constrained to develop in a world where sustainability has become an issue, right? We can't develop using fossil fuels. If we develop, then we will actually destroy India and destroy the world, right? We have to develop in an inclusive environment because of the size of the country and the composition of the economy. So, you know, that we have to develop. So that's where the new models for the world is very, very important. And this will become the model for especially the emerging countries from India to the world.
Can India create the models for the emerging part of the world, for emerging economies? Sunil, Munjal, you know, creating that compact between the public and the private sector to address some of these problems. If I would ask you to lay out for us the matrix, the grid, so to speak, of what you believe the new model should be, what would it look like?
I'll give you an example of what we have done ourselves. So what we decided many, many years ago was, any place we set up a business, we will set up a foundation project, any place. Whether we set up a factory or even an office, we will always set up either an education project or a healthcare project, clean drinking water, gender issues, skilling, rural development, or the big initiative now we're working on is in arts and culture. And all of them, by the way, are scaled. We have 30,000 kids studying in our schools. Our hospital, teaching hospital is one of the largest in the country right now. We have 1,950 beds in one location with 26 super specialties. Our festival, which started 10 years ago in Goa, now attracts a footfall of 100,000 a day over an 8-9 period. I think it's one of the largest if not the actual largest festival in the world. We are currently...
Well, congratulations on creating the largest art and culture festival in India for the world, Sunil Munjal.
And it is for the world, because we have artists coming from 30 countries. We have visitors coming from about 60, and it's growing every year. We had 74 of the world's top leading cultural institutions attending last December. We've now started work on a new facility in Delhi, which I believe will be the only arts and culture center of its kind in the world. Only place in the world where you will be able to experience every part of the entire ecosystem of every art form on one campus, including education, training, skilling, research, innovation, practice, as also almost a rediscovery of our heritage, because we're working on revival and contemporizing our artisanal skills as well. But all of this is being done to scale. All of this being done to world scale, because we do have a cultural heritage which is richer than the rest of the world.
Yes.
And as Karan was saying right now, our diversity is not a weakness, it's actually our strength.
Yeah.
The amazing variety that you have across the country in terms of languages. We're working, for example, on musical instruments that are no longer in use. We've collected, I don't remember the exact number now, somewhere between 500 or such. And we are actually trying to bring them back into use. We're doing research on each one of them.
Yeah.
So we are pushing the boundary both of new knowledge based on old experiences.
Yeah.
The center is going to be the most sustainable campus on the planet on day zero. It's being designed as a carbon neutral and a water positive, not neutral, mind you, a water positive center. And majority of the passive techniques are from over 1,000 years ago.
Nice.
But we have the top tech companies also working with us at the same time.
Right.
So that's one thing that we have tried to do, and that we happily impart that knowledge to anybody who comes. We actually talk about this in multiple fora and platforms, because I think more people need to do this to be able to cross the barrier, not wait for government to give us direction to do it. It has to be our own initiative, because we need this.
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right in pointing out that as we attack the future, we need to preserve the past as well, and we need to build on the past. But Kris Gopalakrishnan, you said we need to story tell. So let me end by asking you, are we closer to the climax of this story? And if yes, what would the climax read like?
Well, the climax is India becoming a developed country in the next, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years, which means that we will be one of the largest, second largest, first largest economy in the world, maybe second largest economy in the world. And more important is that a per capita income of close to $20,000, 1.6 billion people who will be, no more poor. They are going to be middle class or upper middle class. I think that's going to be an amazing transition in a very short period. I think that's the climax we are all looking for. And more importantly, the next generation has to take the lead in doing this. Our generation has done little bit of the work, but now it's the next generation which has to do the rest of the work.
The challenge we have to address here is speed. We have to get richer before we get old.
We have to get richer before we get older, and adaptability, agility, and of course, taking the reins forward is the gauntlet that you're throwing to the next generation. But Sunil Munjal and Kris Gopalakrishnan, many, many thanks for joining us. Impact at scale, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause to the both of them. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and your stories with us. Thank you very much indeed.